As much as I really hate to say it, I do think the end of old school RuneScape is near. Now, before this video starts, I just want to say that I know I will receive a lot of hate for this video. I understand and accept all of it. I just want to share my opinion on the state of the game, its direction, and a possible unfortunate future the game may actually come to. So, sit back, open up old school RuneScape, and listen to me rant. Old school RuneScape was released in 2013 with minimal content. Now, in 2019, we've seen a ton of new content added along the way, and in my opinion, it's improved the game immensely and kept things very, very fresh for us to enjoy. We have new bosses, new armor, new quests, and minigames to compete in, and we can even play from our phones while we're, in class or at work. We can't waste any XP, boys. That being said, I think further additions of major content updates challenge the authenticity of old school RuneScape as we know it. Some may enjoy it, and others may be upset, but in my opinion, there's no doubt that we're straying away from the game that we once knew. First of all, I wanted to talk about the state of skilling in old school RuneScape. As you guys probably know, skilling was a big part of RuneScape back in the true 2007 game, and it was often a very viable moneymaker for people, but currently, skilling in the game is almost pointless unless you're trying to knock out a quest requirement, going for a 99 skill cape, or trying just to max your account. Out of all the skills, the only skill which serves as a viable and consistent moneymaker for players is runecrafting, which happens to be one of the most hated skills. Runecrafting can maybe net you 2 mil an hour towards the high-end levels of the skill, and even so, like I said, many players will avoid chasing this moneymaker as a majority of the player base is not interested in runecrafting. Most, in fact, hate it so much. Just go look at the memes on the OSRS subreddit. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Skilling back in 2007, which, by the way, old school RuneScape is supposed to be based on top of, not mirror exactly, but just based on top of, was an essential part of the game. Skills such as fishing, woodcutting, or mining were viable ways to gain GP for your account. Personally, back then, I was a flax picker, but that's just my 2 cents. Either way, competing and leveling these skills not only increased your total level, but unlocked better resources for you to harvest so you could make better money. Today, only the level portion is focused on, and you'd be lucky if you made over 300k an hour by training any one of these skills. And seriously, that will include a lot of time running back and forth to the bank, even though most banks are right next to the skilling resources now. I know botting plays a role in why skilling prices are much lower now, but I think it's pretty clear that Jagex has not done a lot to increase the profits of skilling. Since they can't defeat the bots, I think Jagex has just focused on other ways for legitimate players to bring these resources into the game to actually benefit off of the prices. I believe this is likely because of Jagex's 20-year fight against the bots, which is very difficult for them to accomplish, but again, it does neglect the value of skilling, which is an essential part of RuneScape. So the last significant skilling update that came out was likely the Farming Guild, but besides that, all the skilling updates in the game have been maybe Wintertodt, or possibly Zaya with the Woodcutting Guild, and don't get me wrong, I love Slayer, but how many Slayer quality of life, PvM bosses and challenges have we gotten? Way too many compared to how many skilling updates we've gotten and the focus on skilling. And more recently with Konar Slayer, we're already seeing yet another profitable way to train Slayer, which isn't necessarily bad, but we do need to focus some of these resources on skilling so people can skill and make money that way. Some of you might say that warding will fix this issue. It will bring a new skill into the game for people to enjoy and to focus on, and bring some fresh content into the game. But we cannot have warding, and I repeat, we cannot have warding. There's nothing more that I want in this world than to see warding fail the poll. Why? Warding does not fix any problems for old school RuneScape. Sure, it creates a way for players to make magic armor, where previously it had to be farmed off of drops, such as Slayer drops, but a new skill is not going to entice players to come back to the game, or focus on that skill instead of other things they're doing in the game currently, such as bossing or Slayer, which, let's be honest, is the main focus for most players in this game. Warding will not be a profitable skill either. It's not like warding will come out and people will start suddenly doing it and be making millions of GP. Maybe for a small fraction in the beginning, but that will not last long at all. The same way the rest of the skills in-game are already devalued to the point where they're not profitable. But let's be real, enough of the skilling. That's just a major downside in my opinion to the game, but other people might not even agree on this, so let's touch on some of the new content Jagex has released. For the most part, like I've said before, I've been happy with every update that's come into the game up to this point. It's just provided more content for people to experience, more places to explore, and more fun things for you to do with your friends. But that being said, I think Jagex is moving closer and closer to a wall each time they release an update. As they move closer to this wall, they're eventually going to have to break through it. And when they do, old school RuneScape will not be the same as it currently is, and on top of that, we'll see a new form of RuneScape. Not RuneScape 3, but something we're not familiar with yet and we have never seen. Let's look at two different examples of content that Jagex has released, Raids 1 and Raids 2, as well as Wintertodt and Konar Slayer. In Raids 1 and 2, Jagex aimed to release a PVM challenge with the chance of unlocking powerful rewards upon completion. Honestly, I think this was a fantastic addition to the game in my own eyes, but it did bring new weaponry and armor into the game, creating new best-in-slot items. How many times can Jagex create new best-in-slot gear? If a PVM challenge brings gear which is not best-in-slot, it will be called out for being dead content. If the gear is not best-in-slot but is still very good, then it will devalue another existing item in the game, making that old piece of gear dead content. Jagex can only release so many new items before the items that we remember in classic 2007 Scape are no longer staples of the game. I mean, seriously, how would it feel if the Abyssal Whip was no longer a weapon that anybody used? Not very good at all. Now, let's take a look at Wintertodt and Konar Slayer. Again, two great updates bringing a ton of new fun stuff to do in the game, but they do have a major downside. Wintertodt and Konar Slayer bring a ton of resources into the game, which are normally collected through traditional skilling methods. While this does devalue skilling, we did kind of touch on that enough, but that's not the only main concern here. With all of these new methods for obtaining these skilling resources, we're seeing large inflations of skilling resources coming into the game. For example, since Konar release, we're seeing some of the lowest herb prices we've ever come across to date in old school RuneScape. Renarweed is the lowest it's ever been, which is in turn affecting prices of consumables in the game. Each update Jagex releases, depending on its specific drop tables, is having lasting effects on the game's economy. How many times can you add herbs and logs to a drop table before ruining an item completely? Look at the price of flax. That item value was completely destroyed by the drop table addition to Zulrah. Still not convinced? Let's take a look at the new update coming into the game, Priffindas and the Song of Elves quest expansion. The community polled to add mahogany and teak trees to the new area, trees which are now currently in remote locations of the game, where banking these logs is a large process and not very easy to accomplish at all. These logs still hold a decent value in relation to other logs, but this new update will completely crash the price of these logs. Why, you may ask? The mahogany and teak trees will be in Priffindas, which is a spot with bank access nearby. In the end, Jagex either has to add new weapons into the game, further progressing away from older items and inserting power creep into the game, or Jagex has to pull from existing resources within the game. Both are not good long-term solutions and hurt the state of old school RuneScape. Personally, I think if we added some more item sinks into the game, that this would make a significant difference and kind of help extend this progress, especially with the updates such as Wintertodt and Konar Slayer, where a lot of skilling resources are coming into the game. But again, that also makes botting more profitable, and I'm not sure that Jagex is aiming to do that at all, so they do have to be very careful with how they balance this. And to be honest, just having a gold sink in the game does not fix this either, because that's just, making the price of cash more important. It doesn't really help the price of resources at all. The final point that I wanted to touch on in this video is the game's growth. Let's be honest here, Tutorial Island is iconic for old players. It's amazing, nostalgic, and all of that cheesy stuff that we remember, but it does not do a very good job of teaching you the game in its current state. I'm all for keeping the island, but we need a much more noob-friendly way of teaching people how not to only play old school RuneScape, but enjoy their experience here. Maybe you all can help me think of a solution for this problem in the comments, but I think having a series of advanced tutorials on the mainland that are modernized for the current game would be a perfect solution for this. Seriously though, how many people do you think tried old school RuneScape for the first time, and do you think quit before leaving Tutorial Island? Since we had all these new players coming in with mobile, it would have been super nice to have a complete tutorial set up for them so they could actually learn the game if they were completely new. Again, like, it's not too bad if you've played in the past, but I think it may have deterred a lot of people before they even got into the real game. And even if they did, do you think they progressed their accounts to unlock Rune? Like, I'm not too convinced that actually happened. A more beginner-friendly way of learning would increase the player base of this game. Currently, the best way to learn the game is by watching YouTube videos. Again, that's in my opinion, but I do think that's the best way. Kind of sort of like you are now watching this YouTube video, but I don't think that's the best way to attack this situation. In my opinion, with a little bit of effort from Jagex, we could see an advanced tutorial series which could really accommodate players to the game and give them a much more enjoyable experience. Undoubtedly, if you're watching this video, you love the game immensely. We all love this game immensely. Many of us log in daily to progress, chat with our friends, and just overall escape from our daily lives for a bit. We're not in immediate danger, but we're only a few critical updates away from changing the state of old school RuneScape as we know it. Please let me know your opinions on all of this in the comments below, and if you have any positive outlooks or negative outlooks on old school RuneScape's longevity. It would also be cool to know if you guys think that RuneScape will be able to keep its feeling of old school as these new updates pass. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Happy scaping!